All right, let's play a game.
Yeah, we're playing a game.
It's called What Alignment.
Gotcha.
I'm going to give you a character, and you're going to tell me what quote-unquote D&D based alignment they are.
Oh boy, you don't have alignment in D&D anymore.
Really?
Yeah, taking it out.
Interesting.
But we'll go with to a second.
We'll go with the classical definition.
Yeah, the classical. Yeah, let's do that.
The Joker.
Oh,
I think there's two arguments that can be made here.
he's chaotic something.
Chaotic evil or chaotic neutral?
Probably neutral, because I don't think it really mattered one way or another whether it was just for his own whim.
I suppose it depends on what version of the Joker you're talking about, right?
I don't know. I never watched the Heath Ledger version, so
I think traditional definition. I think chaotic neutral
yeah,
with evil tendencies.
right.
If we're going to the old school 3-point alignment.
Yeah, but I mean, there was. I think if I recall correctly, there was times where the Joker did stuff that wasn't considered evil, right?
But was it for his own benefit?
No, probably not. Or maybe, I don't know. That's neutral, though. Evil would be just evil, right?
Well, evil will sometimes do things that are good, but it's, like for evil intent, a selfish intent.
Right.
Okay. Anyways, we're talking about alignment today.
Yes.
Does it have a place in games? We talked about the new D&D edition coming out doesn't have alignment.
Right.
Sometimes it's just something that's written down on a paper that people ignore. Sometimes it's written down on the paper and people will roleplay to it, and it can be a really cool tool.
Right. And Pathfinder is going to be taking it out of its system, too. So.
Okay, so let's talk about D&D and what alignment means to it in the older school systems.
Right.
So, one of the big things that pops up to me is class restrictions based upon alignment.
Right.
Used to be you could only be a paladin if you were a lawful good.
Yeah, the holier than thou.
Yeah. You weren't allowed to be
Yep.
a chaotic paladin.
No.
It's just...
It just wouldn't have worked. They were following rules of whatever king or kingdom they were doing, or god they were following, I should say. So
the other one that never really worked, it was kind of a soft-spoken in our group, but chaotic wizards
yeah.
wasn't really a thing in our games because
the wizards got to be so organized, and so everything's got to be such a way to make the magic work the way they want it to.
yeah, and then they're always thinking 10 steps ahead. And
right.
The other one is lawful monks.
Right.
You could be lawful evil, lawful neutral, or lawful good as a monk in older editions.
Yeah,
you had to be lawful.
I think the priests, all the priests were based off their god type that they're worshiping, whether it was the sun or the earth or the whatever devil, whatever they worshipped.
And then the druids used to be
true neutral. They're supposed to be.
However, so true neutral, as classically defined in first and second edition Dungeons and Dragons, if you're fighting a group of goblins and there's 10 of them and 5 party members,
right?
As soon as you kill 6 goblins and there's 4 goblins left, the druid would switch sides.
Right.
That's true neutral.
Yep.
Now, the way that you got around that in games, it's like the DM would always... my DM brought up a good point. He said there's always more evil in the world than there is good.
Right.
So druids tend to err on the side of good to balance things out.
Yeah, my DMs were always like, well, the goblins were chopping down all the trees before you got here. So, I mean, they were burning my forest down. Well, then I better fight them all.
So, the way that I always ran druids is I created the 10th alignment.
10th alignment?
10th alignment.
Okay.
Neutral.
Okay.
So, you don't err on the side of large. It's not true neutral.
Right.
There's a slight distinction in the fact that you're not going to just always side with the underdog, essentially. Neutral is you are somewhat self-interested so long as it suits you. You're interested in others as long as it suits the benefit of whatever cause you're working towards. And neutral in the fact that you don't err towards the side of law or chaos.
Right.
And a big problem I see a lot of times with the distinction between law and chaos is people think, if you're lawful, you follow all the laws.
Right.
That's not necessarily true.
I've always thought lawful is you follow rules, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the rules that the baron of the land that did it. It could have been the rules that your family made up for your own gathering, a group of people, and that's your rules, like barbarians.
I always went with law and chaos the way I explained it to my players. I went with psychology terms.
Right.
If you're lawful, you're a concrete sequential. So you are a person who deals in absolutes, facts,
right,
and very organized thinking.
Yeah.
If you're an abstract random, which would be the chaotic equivalent, you deal in spur of the moment things.
Right.
Very spontaneous. Not necessarily a rhyme to the reason. A lot of times.
I can agree with that.
And that helped explain it a lot to my players. And then if you're neutral, whatever, good or evil, it swayed to the
right
side of things. Another cool thing, in older Dungeons and Dragons editions, and this was kind of like a homebrew thing I did, was there's a being of supreme law,
right,
a being of supreme neutrality, and a being of supreme chaos. So, traditionally speaking, the being of true neutrality was Io, the Ever-Dragon, the Ninefold Dragon. He was all alignments.
Right.
Therefore, cancels out, he's true neutral.
And then the good one was?
There was no... I didn't have good or evil.
Oh, lawful.
I had lawful, chaotic, and neutral.
Okay.
I believe the chaotic was Therisdune, which is from a very old module of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
He's kind of like this over-deity
right.
in the lore. He's kind of not talked about a whole lot. But he's basically the one that plunged the Shard of Ultimate Evil into the Abyss, created the Abyss, created most of the chaotic planes and chaotic beings.
That was the lawful person? No,
the being of supreme law, it's actually fuzzy on my end now, but I think it was Primus.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure.
Which is the Primarch of all Modrons.
Right, okay, well, that would make sense then.
Yeah.
Okay, so with all that said, do you think games do it? I mean, there's a lot of games getting away from that, and I understand why, because at least from a DM standpoint, when I ask characters to make a either good or evil alignment, they just do what they want anyway. And then they be damned if they be unhappy when I punish them for it.
Yeah.
You know, or, yeah, you guys are you're supposed to be cops, and you're supposed to be playing good, then you go kick down doors and steal stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to be punished for that. Not that you guys have done that in the Pathfinder game, but I've had that happen in the past.
Well, there used to be mechanics in the game in place for that.
Right. Now it's...
If you switch alignment, you would be able to gain XP.
Right. That's true.
You'd actually forfeit XP a lot of times.
Right.
Or you'd, like, say you were a lawful good paladin, you could lose your powers. Right. Or if you're a cleric and you acted outside your deity's alignment, you would forfeit your powers.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you weren't a lawful good paladin, you walked by someone that needed help and you didn't help them, well, you're done now. Yeah.
Branching away from D&D a little bit, you mentioned Pathfinder.
Yep.
From my understanding, the alignment chart's pretty similar to D&D.
Yes, it is. They're moving away from it, and they're moving towards more edicts, from my understanding, where they're not really defining it as good and evil, but if you read some of the edicts or whatever that they're working towards, it'll be basically the same thing, but they won't have the complicated, as far as I understand, they're not going to have the complicated system they have right now for fighting. Like, right now there's lawful damage, there's good damage, there's chaotic damage, there's evil damage, there's neutral damage, and then there's just all kinds of damage. I think they're getting rid of that and just making it more of edicts.
Which should simplify things.
Which hopefully, because I think some of the problem with Pathfinder was it does bog you down at times.
Yeah.
The grind gets real, and I think that part of it. And it's really hard to get... I think they understand with the current generation of gamers that they don't want to, for lack of a better word, define good or evil. Because, well, when you do that, then you
draw
have
a hard line.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden...
people.
And so with the current generation, I think that's kind of why it's going that way.
Okay, so...
To some extent.
I will say there is some merit to that. Because good and evil sometimes can be defined by culture.
Right.
So it does make sort of sense in a way.
Right.
A different system I would like to talk about, just touch on a little bit, that I always thought had a cool alignment system, was the Palladium games.
Yeah, I never played much.
So that would be like Heroes Unlimited, Rifts.
Yep, I've heard of most of them, but I haven't played much of them.
They had good, evil, and it wasn't called neutral, it was something else. But they basically had different types of good alignment. They weren't like lawful good, chaotic good, whatever. It was like scrupulous, unscrupulous. It was like Batman, Superman. Like they had. It was always like there was a character that was in mind with that alignment. It was basically a moral code.
Yeah, I honestly think getting rid of alignment and getting rid of that stuff, not necessarily a good thing. I think that it's nice to have the polarizing factions in a game. I mean, the way Wizards is going, there's no good, there's no bad. The evil orcs that used to run around villages and kill babies and chickens and dogs and puppies and kittens now are just good guys because that's just their culture. That's just what they do.
Yeah.
But if you can't draw the line, it's not nearly as easy to get people to follow adventure hooks and stuff if you can't draw a difference between the two.
Right.
The easiest way to do that is go, hey, the tribe of orcs or tribe of drow came up from the Underdark and murdered off a village of 5,000 people. Like, oh, well, now all of a sudden heroes are paying attention because there's money involved and there's some bad people we got to go take care of. But if everybody's good, the guys are like, well, I mean, they were just trying to feed their kids.
Yeah.
Like, and all of a sudden, oh, well, there's a whole bunch of just gone because you took away the good and evil.
Perspective does matter a lot.
Yeah.
But I also think that, like you said, for the function of driving a game, having definitions and hard lines
almost every video game you play, at least have played in the past, have that hard definition, good and evil. Right or wrong. I mean, it's what keeps things going in a direction. Now, you can play lots of games now will let you define the path, good or evil, which however you want to define it. You can even take a neutral stance in some games. But it's just tough as a player, and to get everybody at the table to do the same thing without having a definition is pretty tough.
I would like to talk a little bit about games that have not necessarily any alignment, but there is a common moral code that is shared between characters.
Right.
So a really cool game that came out years ago, pretty hard to find now. It's called Dogs in the Vineyard. And you play as basically religious watchdogs in the old Wild West.
Right.
And all the characters are these religious watchdogs. You agree as players that, okay, this is what we're playing.
Right.
And so the game is designed and driven around that idea.
Right.
So even games that don't necessarily have alignments sometimes have a familiar moral code that all players share that drives the action of the game. Blades in the Dark is another great example.
Right.
You're basically all evil, rotten scoundrels to the core.
Right.
But how you choose to use that
right.
kind of determines and what makes your character interesting.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm not against not having alignment. I think that it's okay, but to make... The problem gets to be is people are so... I don't want to say simple, but nobody wants to look too deep. Now, a lot of people don't want to look any deeper than what you tell them.
Yeah, that's
and
fair.
So if I, like in the Wild West, if you watch old, in fact, I've been going back over a bunch of old Clint Eastwood movies, and all of them are gray as, I mean, there's some big gray areas in there, what's good and bad. But if you go to the mining town, you have another miner trying to take over the town by force, and they get this third-party bounty hunter that just happened to move into town, and he starts killing all the bad guys. I mean, who's good and bad in that one?
So I want to talk about this. I want to dive a little deeper into this.
They did what they did to survive.
So, Clint Eastwood, the man with no name. We'll go with that character.
Okay.
He's from the Fistful of Dollars.
Yep.
A few dollars more.
Pretty much all of his movies are the same way. Yeah.
So that particular character, the one with the poncho, the hat, the cigar. What alignment was he?
Selfish alignment. He did what he wanted.
Yeah.
Like, literally what, at the whim of the time.
I feel like he's kind of the definition of neutral.
Yeah. And I think that's okay. I think that if you can get players at your table to agree to that, but again, a lot of people don't want to look that deep, hence why the words alignment were even made.
But this goes back to an earlier podcast we talked about with communication and understanding between players.
Yeah.
In games that are driven by a similar moral code or alignment.
Right.
Oh, one sec.
Yep.
Oh, God.
Do it.
I'm going to sneeze.
Do it.
Oh, that's the worst.
Faked.
Oh, I got faked out. I lost my train of thought.
Good alignment code, moral code.
Oh yeah. So it all comes down to like your session 0 and talking to your players and a formidable understanding between everybody that this is what drives our actions in the game.
Yes, and that's when I do my session 0s now. I tell people, this is how it's going to be. If you don't want to play it, don't play it.
And alignment is a useful tool in that because it's a very... It's not simple to understand, but it's something most people can grasp.
Right, yeah.
Okay, lawful good.
Like you guys
I don't walk around and shoot people.
Like you guys are playing cops, you generally should, because you're in the city you're in and the type of job you're doing, you should be a good alignment. That's what the module recommends. That's how it... Yes, are there bad cops? Yes, there are. Are there neutral cops? Yes, there are.
Yeah.
But you're supposed to be looking out for the betterment of the society by being a good cop.
Yeah, and like...
Supposed to be.
I think a lot of it, too, has to do with the experience of the player.
Right.
So, like, in the Pathfinder game, yeah, we're all good alignment except for me. I'm lawful neutral. But you let me get away with that because you know that I'm pretty much going to stick to lawful neutral and not just go around and murder people.
Right. Now everybody else knows. Thanks a lot.
Oh, do they?
No,
I don't think... Actually, maybe no one else knows.
I don't know.
But I don't remember. But
it don't make any difference now.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, no, yeah, and that's fine. You have players that are experienced enough just to play. It doesn't make... You don't even need to talk about alignment then because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But when you get experienced players that have to have every nuance and every little thing detailed for them, then you have to go down that road.
What I used to do in my Dungeons & Dragons games when I played in college and had newer players, I used to assign alignments at level 3.
Right.
So I would let people play until level 3, think about their actions, take notes as a DM, and then assign people alignments.
There you go.
And if someone didn't agree with me, we'd have a discussion.
And then you just did it anyway.
No.
That's what
I think I was convinced one time that I was wrong.
Okay. Fair enough. Was it Emerson?
No.
No, okay.
No. It was my buddy James.
Okay. Figured if anybody could convince you anything, it would be Emerson.
Yeah. Yeah. He would have been a good contender. Yeah. I guess going forward, as long as there's an understanding between people, you don't really need alignment.
Right.
But it's a good safety net for newer players and for players that, like you said, don't want to think too critically.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people that don't want to think deeply, and that, I mean, that's just how it is. And you get a lot of new players that never played an RPG before, and if you don't, it's like anything, if you don't handhold them through it.
And there are even players that have played a lot of RPGs that still need the handhold.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to call it any names.
Okay.
But a great example is
Gamer Joe.
Gamer Joe.
Gamer Joe. All right. We like Gamer Joe.
So this particular Gamer Joe liked to play a lot of Rangers.
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't very attentive in sessions.
Yep.
You know who I'm talking about now.
Yep. I know.
And did need a little bit of hand-holding.
Right.
And a lot of times my DM at the time would have to remind him, hey, you wouldn't do that because your alignment, you're a Ranger. You wouldn't, your alignment kind of limits you on that.
Right.
Like,
yeah, because your Rangers, I think, old editions were neutral good, weren't they?
Neutral good, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think they were neutral good.
Yeah. But like it was a tool to keep the game from getting too chaotic.
Right.
Which I guess some people would argue is not the way to do a role-playing game.
Right.
But for some people, they need it.
Yeah, I mean, if you just want to keep some people interested, you have to do it.
Yeah, and it goes back to another previous podcast topic of the interest of the table.
Right.
Not the interest of one person playing.
Right. Yeah, if you have just one person doing just stuff and everybody else is sitting around listening and doing, and then five out of 6 people aren't having fun, then you don't have a game anyway.
Yeah. So it goes back to that whole consensus of it's a group game.
Right.
You're playing as a group. So
alignment is alignment.
Yep.
Like it or not. Anyway, I think that'll be it for this podcast.
All right.
All right.